Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. May 31st, 2021, in Hillsborough, North Carolina, reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 25, Text 30. Yashoda Rohini Nando Ramascha Balinam Vadaha Krishnam Malingya Yuyujur Ashisha Sneha Karata Ashisha Sneha Katara. Please chant. Yasoda, Mother Yasoda, Rohini, Nandaha, Nanda Maharaja, Ramaha, Balarama, Cha, also Balinam, of the strong, Varaha, the greatest, Krishnam, Krishna, Alingya, embracing, Yuyuju, they all offered Ashishaha, benedictions, Sneha, by their affection for him, Kataraha, beside themselves. BBT translation. Mother Yashoda, Mother Rohini, Nanda Maharaja, and Balarama, the greatest of the strong, all embraced Krishna. Overwhelmed with affection, they offered him their blessings. We're going to read Sanatana Goswami's Tika. Jiva Goswami basically just says the same thing, and Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur references Sanatana Goswami and says also, practically speaking, the same thing. This verse describes his meeting with the mother and others who were more affectionate to him than the other cowherds and women and were situated behind. Rohini's name is mentioned before Nanda's name, since Nanda gave her great respect, and she was the assistant of Yashoda. Balarama is called the best of the strong because, though he could have lifted Govardhan also, since he holds the earth on his head with ease in his expansion named Sesha, he was not inclined to do so because Krishna desired to perform this pastime. Or the phrase can indicate that he embraced Krishna with great intensity. So here we see some hermeneutics by Sanatana Goswami. He's giving two possible explanations of the fact that Balaram was called Balinam Varaha, the greatest of the strong. One is that his embrace of Krishna was very strong, that he strongly embraced Krishna. And the other is that he could have held up Govardhan Hill if he had wanted to. What do the planets feel like on the heads of Anantasesha? A mustard seed. So if you had a mustard seed on your head, would you even know it was there? Agreeing with Krishna's desire, he remained silent because of his great affection, his great strength, and his knowledge, or in order to assist in glorifying Krishna as the lifter of Govardhan. Thus, he was not mentioned previously in the pastime. Yasoda, Rohini, and Nanda blessed him, saying, "Protect us always, be happy always, and attain all your desires at all times." They were bewildered, Kartaraha, because of their affection. And one thing that Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur adds here is that the reason Balaram is included with Rohini, Nanda, and Yasoda is that he also can have sometimes some parental type affection for Krishna, being the older brother. In old drawings of lifting Govardhan, it is sometimes seen that the elder women offer him butter to eat, and his father and uncles support Govardhana with their heads. In this way, they become confused by their affection. Soda Rohini Nando Ramascha Balina Varaha Krishnam Alingya Yuyujur Ashishya Sneha Kartaraha. Mother Yasoda, Mother Rohini, Nanda Maharaj, and Balaram, the greatest of the strong, all embraced Krishna. Overwhelmed with affection, they offered him their blessings. So here we see eternal family. Krishna with his eternal family, his mother and father, Rohini, who's like a mother to him, and his brother Balaram. And this may be a little astonishing, the concept that God has a family, his own personal family, especially his own mother and father. Of course, in Christianity, they have the idea of Mary and Joseph being the mother and father of Jesus, Joseph being the foster father of Jesus. So they have some kind of conception like that of God having a mother. And of course, the Roman Catholics and the Eastern Orthodox specifically revere Mary, although the Protestants have rejected this reverence of Mary. They consider reverencing Mary a kind of idol worship. But this idea that God has a family, and a number of places, Srila Prabhupada will talk about the fact that Krishna likes to be addressed in terms of his relationship with his family. He likes to be called Yasoda Nandana and Nanda Nandana. And the gopis also, after Krishna's gone to Mathura, they say, I'm sure Krishna is remembering his mother and father because the family relationship is very dear even to the great sages. But he's probably not remembering us because we weren't part of his family. So they're speaking like this. And of course, this is very mysterious because God says, Aham bija pradapita, I am the father of everyone. Krishna also says, I'm the mother. I am the mother. I am the father. I am the grandsire. And in every religious tradition, Krishna is addressed as the supreme father. Ratna Radhika was speaking about this the other day, the concept that religions see the Lord as the father. So the concept that Krishna is there as a family member, and he's there, as one of the children in the family, the prince. He's not there as the king of Vraja. Of course, he's not even there as the king of Mathura. Krishna installs Ugrasena as the king. Interesting. After Krishna kills Kamsa, he doesn't become the king. Rather, he installs Ugrasena as the king. He remains as the prince. Of course, he also says, as members of the Yadu dynasty, there's this provision that the Yadus don't rule and so forth. That's external. Krishna likes to take this position. Of course, in Vaikuntha, it's not like that. We don't hear in Vaikuntha of the Lord having a mother and father. And in Vaikuntha, the Lord is a supreme king. So those who want to see God like that, there's this eternal debate. Is Vishnu is Vishnu the supreme manifestation of God, or is Krishna the supreme manifestation of God? I have a god brother who argues with me endlessly that actually Vishnu is a supreme manifestation of Godhead. So I just say, yes, very nice. Because Krishna Das Kaviraj says, if you want to say Krishna is a manifestation of Kshirodakshay Vishnu, if you want to say, well, that's fine, you can say like that. And in Vaikuntha, Sanatana Goswami describes how the residents of Vaikuntha, they're arguing with Gopal Kumar. And they're saying, don't call Krishna Gopal. It's like calling going to the president and saying, oh, you're a village boy, like Jimmy Carter. Oh, you're just a peanut farmer. Oh, peanut farmer. Instead of saying president, oh, President Carty, oh, peanut farmer Carter. So the residents of Vaikuntha were saying like this, you can't call him Gopal. They say, yes, he herds cows in order to have a disguise to kill the demons. But he's the Lord of Lords and the King of Kings. And so those who want to see God in his supreme form of majesty, those who define God as the most majestic, for them, Vishnu is the supreme form of Godhead. But to those who define God as Akila Rasamrita Murti, as the form of the most variety and intimacy of rasas, they see Krishna as supreme. Krishna's two Bhagavans. Ete Chamsa Kalapamsa. Krishna's two Bhagavans. They see Krishna as the avatari. And we can ask, is this real? Is it real? How is it real that Nanda is Krishna's father and that Yasoda is Krishna's mother? Even that Balaram's Krishna's older brother. How are we talking about older? Somebody can be older than Krishna. Does that make sense? One of Krishna's manifestations is older than another. Does that make any sense? Krishna is the oldest. Ajam Purana Purusham Navayodanam. He's the oldest, and all of his forms are eternal. Even for us, we're not created. Ajo Nichasaspato Yam Purano no Hanyate Manyas, whatever. I should know that verse in my sleep. But anyway, so we're not created at a particular time. It's like the sun and the sunshine. You can't say first there was the sun and then there was the sunshine. Can you say that? There's no meaning to the sun without sunshine, and there's no meaning to the sunshine without sun. So we are eternal. We don't have a beginning. We're beginningless. Ajam Purana Purusha. We are eternal, and the Lord is eternal. Ajo Nitya Shasvato Yam Purano. Nahanyate Hanya Maneshwari. There we go. We have no birth. So what is this that Krishna has a mother and father, and that he has older brother? He has a lot of brothers and sisters, actually, a lot of half brothers and sisters. Because Vasudeva has 16 wives? And actually all the wives except for Devaki were in Vrindavan. It's explained in the Bhagavatam, although we don't hear much about them in the Vrindavan Leela, but they were all in Vrindavan, and it's possible that some of their children are mentioned later in the Bhagavatam, but it's possible they also had some children there in Vrindavan with Krishna and Balaram. And we just, we're only hearing about the primary personalities in the Leela. So how is this? Is this real? Well, if we want to look at things from the point of view of tattva, then we say, well, really, Krishna is everyone's father, and this is some divine illusion of Yogamaya. Generally, we use the word Yogamaya, at least in the Hare Krishna movement, we use the word Yogamaya to refer to a spiritual kind of bewilderment, and Mahamaya to refer to a material kind of bewilderment. Actually, if you look through the use of the word Yogamaya and Mahamaya in the Bhagavatam and in the other Vedas, that distinction is not actually there. But we tend to use it in that way. But anyway, there's some sort of divine, playful illusion that is put over the residents of Vrindavan, where they think, I'm Krishna's mother, I'm Krishna's father. And Mother Yasoda, when she sees the universal form, for a brief time, she says, oh, how is it that I think Krishna is my son? But she also says, how do I think Nandamars is my husband? How do I think that this land belongs to me? Right? She goes into kind of a different frame, which Krishna quickly dissipates. Right? And again, she sees him as her son. And she never goes into the awe and reverence that Arjuna goes into when he sees the universal form. So again, we can ask, is this real? And to some extent, we answer, well, no. It's a kind of illusion. It's a kind of Maya. On the other hand, we can say this is the ultimate real. It's the ultimate real. In one sense, we can say that the reality of rasa is a higher reality than the reality of tattva. In fact, if we're going to say that Krishna is a supreme manifestation of God rather than Vishnu, we'd have to say that. We'd have to say if Krishna is the ultimate manifestation of Godhead because he has this variety of intimacy of rasa and variety of rasa, then we'd have to say that the variety of rasa and the intimacy of rasa is more real than the majesty where he's the supreme father and everyone are his children. Does that make sense to everybody? So in one sense, we can say that rasa is a higher reality than tattva. It's an eternal existence. Nanda is eternally Krishna's. He's always Krishna's. There wasn't a beginning. Balaram's always Krishna's older brother. It wasn't really, in his Naimika Lila, then Balaram takes birth first, and then Krishna. Nanda and Yasoda appear first, and then Krishna comes in the way of the Nara Lila. But in the spiritual world, it's not like that. There's no birth. Although they have birthday celebrations. They have their birthday festivals, but there's no birth. There's nothing like that. So it's the ultimate reality. There is this family concept that exists in God as an ultimate reality. And Krishna likes having a mother and father, and he likes having an older brother. Isn't that interesting? God's the supreme father, the supreme mother, the supreme older brother. Bhaktivinoda writes one song like that. You're my mother, my father, my brother. But he likes also having them. I mean, it's interesting. In this blessing, they say, may you always protect us. This is fascinating. You know, generally parents don't ask their 7-year-old child to protect them in a catastrophe. You know, if there was a flood here, we wouldn't be asking the little children to protect us. You know, Abhimanyu, please protect us from the flood. You know? So they have this mix of this parental mood, and yet they have this concept that Krishna is protecting them. Of course, they feel Narayana is empowering Krishna to protect them, because that's the discussion that transpires later, where the cowherd man asks Nanda, you know, how is it that Krishna does this? Oh, he's empowered by Narayana. But they're giving him blessings. You know, in traditional societies, the elders give blessings to the youngers. The younger don't give blessing to the older. The younger offer obeisances to the older, and the older blesses the younger. So they're giving him blessings as their elders, right? And Krishna's relishing this. Krishna's relishing that someone loves him as his son, and someone loves him as his little brother. So because this exists in reality, therefore we are hankering for this when we try to imitate God in this world. We want the same kind of thing. We want someone who's going to love us as a mother, and someone who's going to love us as a father, and someone who's going to love us as our older brother and our younger brother, and someone that we can be a child to. And we're trying to replicate this reality in this world. And it becomes the primary focus in this world is our concept of family, which extends to the concept of nation. You know, this is my country, or this is my, you know, ethnicity, and this is my race, and this is all these things expand from this concept of family. And we're very much trying to enjoy that here. You know, my mother loves me, my father loves me. I mean, there's so much psychological trauma and so much physical disease that can be traced to feeling that my mother doesn't love me or my father doesn't love me. I mean, so much. You know, if we feel, oh, you know, my father abandoned me when I was 3, or my mother didn't take care of me, you know, my father was an alcoholic, my big brother beat me up all the time. And there's so much trauma from that. Why? Because we have this concept that we should have this unconditional love from family. There's one devotee that asked me for my advice on his book. Very bad idea to ask me for my advice. I warn them. I say, you know, I was trained by Jayadvaita Swami in editing, and you should not ask me for feedback on your writing. You know, I give them a warning. And then I say, give me 1 page for me to give you feedback on. And then I see how they respond to that. So anyway, he did not respond very well, and he's looking around for another editor. So this devotee who's never been married, he's writing a book on how to care for teenagers. And although he has worked a lot with youth as a preacher. So he sent me this 1 page to review, and it was all about family, as if he was talking about Krishna's family. He's saying, you know, in the family, there's unconditional love. Everybody just gives as much as they can. And you know, you can always count on your family all the time. They're always there for you. They love you no matter what. And I'm like, I said, this is madness. I said, you're describing the spiritual world. I said, if you tell people that if you chant Hare Krishna, your families are going to be like this, you're just going to set them up for disappointment, and you're going to set them up for some concept of entitlement that, you know, we're all chanting Hare Krishna, therefore my family should be like this. He said, it's not a fact. You know, he was saying that within the family, there's no envy. There's never any malice. There's never any betrayal. I'm like, you know, I said, what world are you living in? So The problem with our families in this world is they're not real. Like Maharaj Chitraketu's son, when he's brought back to life by Angira and Narada, and he says, and they say, "Here are your mother and father. They're crying for you." And the boy says, "In what life were they my mother and father?" A similar thing happened with Srivas Thakur's son when Mahaprabhu brought him back to life. And he said, "I am going through so many families, and I am coming and going by the will of the Lord." I mean, Chitraketu said, "I think my son was my enemy in a past life. And he has taken birth as my son and died early just to give me pain." And Prabhupada, in a purport, not with that verse, but a few verses later, he actually says that. He says Chitraketu's son was his enemy in a past life. And it happens. People die fighting on the battlefield, and then they take birth so that it's a mother and son, or brothers, or husband and wife. It happens. It's a good position from which to extract revenge, isn't it? If you really hate somebody, then become their mother or their son or their brother or their spouse. And this happens. We get drawn into families by great attachment, and attachment can be positive or negative. It's not always positive. And then we're changing roles. One lifetime you're the brother, another lifetime you're the wife, another lifetime you're the cousin. And so it's not real. And then we're not these bodies. The relationship becomes my body gave birth to your body. My body took birth from the same parents as your body. But we're not the bodies. So it's really, really an illusion. And the idea that, we're going to be all give to each other without, unconditionally, it's not a fact. Prabhupada talks about, I was just hearing this the other day, how he saw a court case where the mother and son were fighting in court for years over some small thing, right? In Kali Yuga, people will become enemies over a penny. And you'll see this, as somebody dies in the family and people are fighting over the will, and the brothers and sisters become enemies, right? Everybody knows these things. The mother and children become and so many people, they never talk to each other again. I never, so much family estrangement. People they never talk to their mother or their father or their sisters, or, my sister didn't talk to me for 10 years because I joined the Hare Krishna movement. She says, "I want nothing to do with you." And that sister she was 16 when I was born, and she was like a second mother to me. And she always said, "I'll always be here whenever you want. You can always depend on me, anything you need." And then I joined the Hare Krishna movement. She's like, "I don't want to see you again. I don't want to talk to you. I don't want anything to do with you." And it's the nature of the world. Parents who reject their children, children who reject their parents, siblings who reject each other. And it can be over practically nothing. Mother gave you the silver in her will, so I'm never going to talk to you again. Something like that. And so we become very disappointed and frustrated in this world with these sorts of things. My home, my nationality, and my ethnicity, my family, it becomes a source of great disappointment for all of us in some way or another. I think it's a rare person who can say, "Well, I have no disappointment in my family." Right? There's nothing about my family life. Everything's perfect. Maybe there's such a person walking around on the planet. But generally, that's not the case. There's some kind of sorrow. There's some kind of grief. So what do we do with our family relationships in this world? Because everybody has a family. I remember a time in ISKCON when the preachers were like really anti-family, right? Remember that? It was really heavy. All these sannyasis, most of whom did not stay sannyasis, who were, really, really heavy. Don't get married. And, your wife is Maya Devi and your husband is Maya Deva. Children are all little Maya Devas, the tigress and the jackals. And and all this stuff, and I'd be going to these classes, and just I would come home from Bhagavatam class, in tears. I would just come home devastated, sometimes for hours, So, what do we do with because everyone has a family, even if you don't marry and have children, you have parents, and most people have siblings. Nobody can be born in this world without some sort of family. So it's very interesting. Kunti's prayers. Where, Mars, you were talking about Kunti's prayers yesterday at the breakfast. So Kunti has this very interesting prayer, Sneha Pashu, this rope of affection. And she says, please cut this rope of affection with my family members. Now, the Sneha Pashu is also very interesting because it's mentioned by Chitraketu's queen, Kirtaduti, what's her name? Something like that. So when she's crying over the death of her son, she's saying, Providence, why do you create this Sneha Pashu? Why do you create this rope of affection if you're just going to break it? I mean, obviously, for the continuation of the species, it's useful to have a rope of affection within the family. And a lot of it is formed chemically, by the way, but that's a whole other discussion by things like oxytocin. But Kunti is saying, break this Sneha Pashu. And the question is raised, of course, that her family are all Vaishnavas. I mean, Prabhupada gives the explanation that Kunti asked this because she's bewildered with her parental family and her children, that she's attached to both of them. But if Krishna's with her parental family, he's not with her and her children. And if he's with her and her children, he's not with her parental family. And she's so bewildered by the fact that she's torn in these two directions that she's saying, just let me not have any affection for either part of the family, so I'll be okay with wherever Krishna goes. But Prabhupada, in his lecture on that verse, which is put in the teachings of Queen Kunti as part of the purport, he says, seeing in the darkness is not seeing, but seeing in the light is seeing. And we can have real relationships if it's soul to soul via the super soul. So the impersonalists, they see this falsity of our family attachment, that is basically simply biochemicals meant for the preservation biologically of the species. And they say it's not real on the spiritual platform, so just walk away from it. Although there's many statements in the Bhagavatam that even great sages and great realized souls have difficulty in fully walking away from this family affection. But our Vaishnava view is different. Our Vaishnava view is spiritualize it. That's our Vaishnava view. I was looking up the other day, Prabhupada talking about society, friendship, and love. And 99% of the time, Prabhupada writes about society, friendship, and love pejoratively. That it's terrible. But then he formed an international society. That's the S. It's not ICAN, it's ISKCON. He formed a society. And in this society, we have friends. I hope. We have friends. And to have a society, there have to be many families. There's no religious institution in the history of the world that has existed if all the members are celibate. It's never happened. You have to have families. You have to have children. And without families, how is it a society? It's not. So what do we do with this? Do we just have our friends and our family and just hate them all as Maya? I mean, we tried that in ISKCON for quite some time. But we spiritualize them, soul to soul via the super soul. That, of course, there's going to be some affection because of the bodily relation. Prabhupada says that's natural. And again, the young gopis, they talk about Krishna like that. And Prabhupada talks about Krishna. Prabhupada says Krishna likes to be addressed by the names of his family members because it's natural to have some attachment on the basis of family. But our real attachment should be soul to soul via the super soul. Our real attachment should be that we join together in serving Krishna, that Krishna becomes the center. Even Prabhupada talked about himself like that. Prabhupada said, I am not your friend. He said, no one can be your friend. He said, I am your friend in this sense that I am connecting you to Krishna, who is your real friend. And if we do that, it doesn't mean that our family is going to turn into some utopian family like in the spiritual world. Please don't expect that. Please don't expect if I'm a devotee and I marry a devotee that there'll be some kind of unconditional love and in all circumstances and it'll be eternal like that and like Mother Yasoda and Nanda. And please don't expect that. That's not going to be the reality. But there can be this bond of love with Krishna at the center. That there can be. That becomes the idealized form of family in this world. And the idealized form of friendship, like we have Narottama Das Thakur, who writes this song, Sri Rupa Manjari Pada, where he's expressing his love for another devotee. And he's writing about Rupa Manjari like one would write about Krishna. Or he says, Ramachandra Sangay, I want to the association. He's not talking about Lord Ramachandra. He's talking about his friend Ramachandra. And of course, we learn without sadhu sangha, without the association of devotees, nobody can make any advancement, practically speaking. So when we become Vaishnav sangha for each other, then the other Maya thing, the illusory temporary things, become subsidiary. They become not so important. And then also we're not so affected by the difficulty of the temporary relationships, which are there. And there's undoubtedly. Then, if there's a fight between husband and wife, it's not as devastating because it's like, well, don't expect this to be some kind of utopia. I expect that we're going to help each other in our Krishna consciousness. Sometimes we're going to have a fight. Sometimes there's going to be this, sometimes there's going to be that. And another thing we can do is we can remember in these difficulties in our relationships in this world, even between other devotees. I mean, the thing that shook my faith in that when I was just rather new in ISKCON, the thing that really shook my faith was unpalatable relationships between devotees. And I find that situation has a very devastating effect on a lot of people. They're thinking, it's going to be like Yasoda and Nanda and Krishna and Balaram. And when it's not, then their faith gets shaken. Is when these things happen, when our apparent devotee friend becomes our devotee enemy, when there's, catastrophe even in our devotee family, then we can remember that in Krishna's pastimes in this world, these things also happen. Rukmi becomes the enemy of Rukmini and Krishna, so much so that Balaram kills him at the wedding of the grandchildren. There's enmity between the Kurus and the Pandavas, so much so that it erupts into a war. Samba kidnaps Lakshmana and the Kurus they imprison him. Kunti's a widow with young children, and there's an attempt on her life by the very persons who are supposed to be protecting her. And we can become absorbed. There's separation here between Rohini and Vasudeva. I actually meditated some months ago. I was doing some deep meditation on this. We have here about Rohini and Balaram. And this Leela's, it's being shared. Yasoda and Nanda are sharing the glories of their son, Krishna, but Rohini's not able to share the glories of her son Balaram with the father. And there's Vasudeva in Mathura. He gets to hear about what his sons Krishna and Balaram does, but he can't openly celebrate it. Especially can't openly celebrate what Krishna does, just privately with Devaki. He has to hear about Balaram and possibly other children by his other wives, indirectly, maybe. Maybe Rohini can sneak and see him sometimes, but not with Balaram. And to meditate on that and to start going to use our difficulties in this worldly relationships, even among devotees, to go deeply into meditating on Krishna's Leela, and instead of becoming absorbed with our material emotions, to become absorbed with the spiritual emotions and to become absorbed in Krishna's eternal family. So, questions, comments? Maharaj, yes. Who? Yeah, but that's not the whole society. That's a little piece of it. That's just a little piece of it. So you can have, a little piece of this of a religious society that are celibates, but if the whole religion is made of celibates, the religion fails. The Shakers is the primary example. Yeah. Yeah. It doesn't, it just sociologically speaking, it doesn't work. Yes. Yes. So because we have ourself as the center, therefore it doesn't work rather than having Krishna as the center. Is that your point? Yes. Thank you, Rukmini. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.